Hi everyone, welcome to a new video. Thanks for joining me today. So in today's video we're working with colored pencils again. Today I'm demonstrating how to draw grass in colored pencil. I've chosen a picture that's quite close up, so we're going to draw pretty detailed grass, which probably won't happen that much when you're drawing a usual portrait or a wildlife drawing. But it's good to know the details, good to know how textures like these are built up. So yeah, I thought this would be a nice one to do today. So I'll be using Polychromos colored pencils as always, and a white Caran d'Ache luminance to blend. And the paper I use is Canson 1557, 180 grams. So let's get started. What I do first is sketch out the shapes, all the shapes of the individual pieces with a colored pencil. So I'm starting right out with the colored pencils, as doing the sketch in graphite would have not really worked in this case, because the graphite doesn't really work well with the colored pencils when you start shading. So I thought just to sketch right away with a colored pencil, and I'm going for earth green yellowish here. And earth green yellowish is a warmer toned green, but it's still quite neutral. And I'm using a very light pressure to sketch out all the outlines I see. I'm using a photo from Pixabay, so you can just draw along if you want to. I'm not copying everything exactly, but I'm trying to create the same look. So I am looking at the reference to see how the colors are, where the shadows are. I am kind of copying the shapes, but not exactly, because that would take way too long. Okay, so after sketching out the outlines, I go right in and fill in the darkest shadows that I see. So this is how I always like to work with colored pencil. I like to fill in the darkest shadows first, and then based on the darkest shadows you can judge how dark you can go with the lightest values in the drawing. So now I'm just mapping out the shapes of the darkest shadows. I am not using a heavy pressure here, I'm just drawing lightly. And I'm using a dark green. By the way, the real-time version of this tutorial is available on Patreon for the $4 tier. So if you're interested in drawing along with the real-time narration, you can have a look there. And a huge thanks to all my patrons for supporting me, because that will help me make these videos. So now I've lightly mapped out the darkest shadows. Now I'm going on top with dark indigo, which is a blue tone, to darken up the shadows. So I feel like it's really important when doing drawings like this of grass, nature, to use as many different colors as possible. Don't use only green, because that's going to look very flat. And I would also advise to not use black here. So although some shades you see are very dark, they are not completely black. So I'm creating the darkest shadows by just adding different tones of blues and dark greens and brown, even purple. And that way you can create some real dark values without actually using black. Alright, so after filling in the shadows, I start adding the medium tones. So the medium tones I also build up from light to dark. I'm starting out with a very light vibrant green, and that is light green. And I keep my pressure pretty low throughout the whole process until I start burnishing. That's when I add heavier pressure. But most of the time my pressure is pretty low, so I can make sure that I can add enough colors. And enough layers, of course. So I just give most of the pieces of grass a light layer of light green. I leave some open that are more yellow toned, Then I start adding a little bit of shading with a darker green. And this is quite a cool green, as you can see. So I try to combine cool tones and warm tones to get the right balance in the drawing. And as you can see, I'm really not copying the reference. I just use it as a guideline to create my own original drawing. So I really would advise to do these types of close-up drawings as practice, as it is just very interesting to know these types of textures from up close. And it's also really nice to learn how to build up such complicated textures, I would say. But this is the process that I use the most, so filling in the darkest areas, then doing the medium tones, saving the brightest or lightest areas for last, and then I start building up, adding layers until everything gets dark enough, do the burnishing, and then add more layers, more details. But we're not there yet. So I combine cool and warm tones. Now I switch to earth green yellowish again to get in a little more of the warm tone. And now I just start switching and hopping around, darken up shadows where I need to. Also, I'm adding some yellow now, as you can see. I've used several yellows, cadmium yellow, dark Naples ochre I used, I think, and then a brighter yellow as well. As you can see on the reference that there is quite a lot of yellow in this piece of grass. So the most important thing as well is that the front pieces stand out really well. So I do that by sharpening the lines around them a little bit. The lighting here is coming from the top right. So the left side of these grasses are highlighted and then the left side is darker. So I do that, I make the lines quite sharp on the left side, and then I make sure that the grasses behind the front ones are a little bit darker, which make the front ones stand out more. Then when everything has several layers of color, I start burnishing. So the burnishing is definitely to push all the colors into the paper to get rid of the texture of the paper, to smooth everything out and blend the colors together. So it will smudge a bit, you can see. I'm using the white Caran d'Ache Luminous to do this. It smudges out the details, but it also blends the colors really nicely. It does lighten them up a bit more as well. So after burnishing, I go in again and sharpen the lines, get more detail in there, more color. As long as your pressure is not too heavy, you will still be able to do this, depending on what type of paper you use. So I'm trying to divide the grass some more, make them a little bit sharper looking. I'm using quite sharp pencils now, and I am increasing my pressure now. Sorry for the background noise. I'm not sure what they're doing outside, but they are throwing stuff. I'm not sure. Sorry for the background noise. It's quite noisy here in this area. So what I do now, after adding enough layers, when I'm happy with how it looks, I take my Tombow Mono Zero eraser and pull out some highlights on the very tips of the grass. That will make them stand out more and bring them forward. Now I am going to make the background dark as on the reference because I really like how it looks there. So Again, I'm not using black. I'm going to mix brown and blue to get that dark shade there. So I'm starting with walnut brown and just fill in the whole background with it. Being careful around the edges of the grass. And then I take dark indigo and add that on top. Make sure to use an even pressure so the background is evenly layered. We're also going to do the burnishing on the background. So it's really important when you want to burnish that all the layers underneath are even. Otherwise you get blotches and stains. So now I'm also filling in the tips of the grass that are sticking out. Playing with the lighting a little bit more as well. Adding quite some yellow. Now it's just a matter of adding the final details. Then I'm burnishing with the Caran d'Ache luminance again. You can see that lightens up the background quite a lot. And then with a very sharp luminance, I am going around the edges of the grass just a little to push them back into the background a little bit more. Finally, for the final touches, I'm taking my Jelly Roll pen by Sakura and just putting some highlights on the grass. And that completes this drawing. So again, if you're interested in the real-time process, have a look on my Patreon. And if you have any questions, let me know below. Let me know suggestions for next videos, because I have run out of inspiration a little. So maybe a Q&A, I'm not sure. Maybe some live streams again, now I've settled in my new home. And let me know in the comments. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.